In Syria, civil war has forced an estimated 2 million people from their homes, and more than half are school children. So to help keep the kids learning, some of the camps for the displaced, both inside and outside of Syria, are opening schools.
In addition to meeting these children's education needs, the schools also help the children emotionally. VOA correspondent Scott Bobb witnessed firsthand some of the trauma they and other Syrians have experienced. On a recent trip to Syria, Bobb saw evidence that the government is using cluster bombs against civilians. Let's take a look.
Towns and cities that were half full 3 months ago, that were maybe 80 or 90% full 8 months ago, are now almost empty. The destruction is tremendous in comparison to just 8 months ago. The camps, both refugees and the displaced, especially in Syria, waiting to get out of the country, has just gone up exponentially. A camp on the border where I visited recently, which had a few hundred people in August and maybe 5,000 in October, now has more than 10,000 people. And there are people sleeping in tents or outdoors in fields further away, just waiting to move into the camp so that they can get on a waiting list to get out of Syria.
Now, talking about the situation inside the camps, one of the groups most affected by this crisis, it's been children, and specifically how it's affected children's education. What can you tell us about efforts now to provide schooling for kids who have been displaced?
Well, both inside the camps and in some of the cities in Turkey where I have been, local officials are setting up schools.
Gaziantep School for Syrian Refugees. These fourth graders are studying in their native Arabic, though their coursework follows Turkey's curriculum. They also are learning the Turkish and English languages. The school was opened in October when it became clear that they would not be going home anytime soon. Nearly 600 Syrian children study in the 8 classrooms here, the younger ones in the morning, the older ones in the afternoon. At night, more than 300 parents come to learn Turkish.
These children are suffering not only from displacement and the trauma of that, but the trauma of what they have witnessed in terms of bombardments, family members dead, wounded, horrible disfigurements that we've seen. And it shows up in their drawings. This is one of the therapies that they're all using, which is to give them crayons and paper and let them just draw what they see. And what you see time and time again are airplanes bombing, tanks shelling, houses being destroyed, people crying, parents, and so forth. And so it's at least the schools are attempting to provide a bit of stability and a bit of normalcy in what is a very abnormal situation.
I also wanted to ask you this alleged use of cluster bombs by the Syrian government. What can you tell us about what you saw?
We came across a neighborhood outside of the northern city of Azaz, sort of a semi-rural neighborhood of small farms and farmers.
In late January, Syrian government forces used what arms experts say is a particularly deadly weapon. Residents say a plane dropped 9 large cluster bombs on this neighborhood on the outskirts of town. The Russian markings on these bombs indicate they were made more than 30 years ago. Each is specified to contain 30 smaller bombs, which are meant to be released in the air in order to inflict maximum damage. Local resident Mohammed Bakri describes what happened.
We were in our houses when we heard an airplane. Some people ran out into the fields, and then the airplane dropped the bombs. We are farmers here. There are no rebels or terrorists.
And we were told by experts in Washington and in London that these are Soviet-era 1970s, early 1980s cluster bombs. Human rights groups say that anything dropped like this, dropped in a civilian area, is a war crime.
And again, our thanks to VOA's Scott Bobb, who spoke to us from Jerusalem via Skype.